Hey there folks, Rel here. Today we'll be taking a look at the Wraith Cloaking module and why it's pretty much the most amazing thing since Vanu invented sliced bread. We'll cover the specifics of the Wraith Cloak and go on to some general strategies to get the most out of it. This video is not going to go incredibly in depth on combat, as that's something we'll be talking specifically about in the Flash Combat Guide, but you should definitely get the general idea. The Wraith Cloaking module will run you 150 certs for the first rank and 1000 certs for rank 5. Infiltrators driving a Wraith equipped Flash will allow it to cloak, causing the same sort of light deformations that the Infiltrator Cloak uses, and only Infiltrators can activate the Wraith. The cloak will conceal both the driver and the passenger, and during that time will disable weapons fire from either person. You can turn on and disable the cloak using the ability key, but it will also automatically disable if you leave the vehicle or swap seats. If you're stationary for around a second, you'll enter the same deep cloak state as you would with a standard Infiltrator cloak, but the Flash will not do the same unless your graphic settings are on low. Hopefully this is a bug that will be worked out in the future. As a side note, if you're currently being affected by a rejuvenation kit, the healing effect will be stopped while you're invisible. You also won't be able to be healed by allied medics with the healing gun, same as any cloaked Infiltrator. At rank 1, the Wraith Cloak will turn the Flash invisible for 20 seconds, which is extremely generous, just like most rank 1 abilities, and from there it's going to jump up an additional 5 seconds per rank, topping out at 40 seconds at rank 5. Regardless of rank, the Wraith Cloak is going to recharge from 0 to full in 30 seconds, so at maximum rank you're actually getting a substantial bonus to the rate at which your tank recharges. In addition, turning off and on the Wraith Cloak will not instantly burn up a chunk of its energy pool. When you use jump jets, or the regular Infiltrator Cloak, or the Flash Turbo Boost, and pretty much every ability with an energy pool, there is an initial activation cost, and this isn't the case with the Wraith, so you can actually flicker the cloak as much as you like. This is especially useful for ditching enemy lock-ons, as you cannot lock onto the Flash if it's invisible. And by flickering the cloak, you're actually going to be resetting the enemy's lock-on timer, which is really annoying for them. Taking damage does not disable the cloak, and it won't even show an outline of you like the normal Infiltrator cloak would. While cloaked, you do not show up on the minimap, but if you don't have stealth equipped, you will show up as soon as you decloak. The Flash will also still make noise, but it won't emit light or particle effects except for smoke. So if your rig is on fire or severely damaged, there's going to be a very obvious smoke trail following you. As far as visibility is concerned, it's surprisingly difficult to pick out a Flash at distance, especially against certain backdrops, and this is mostly due to the way that the light bends around the Flash. The bigger size, this is subjective, almost makes it seem like it's more difficult to spot than a normal Infiltrator. Fair warning here though, I'm going to go into a little bit of length as to how visibility is affected, so feel free to click the annotation and skip ahead. Generally speaking, the more varied the terrain is, the easier an enemy will see you. This is based on the angle at which the enemy is looking at you from. Let's say if an enemy is looking down on you from above, if you're traveling along a constant solid background, it's almost impossible to spot you without a concerted effort. But if you're traveling along terrain that's constantly shifting colors, and that same airborne enemy is looking down on you, they'll be able to pick you out much more easily. Even if the enemy isn't airborne, specifically, enemies that are slightly higher than you are going to have a harder time picking you up because they're going to be seeing more of the ground through you. On the flip side of that, enemies on even terrain will have an easier time picking you out because you'll be refracting the horizon, the trees, mountains in the background, and pretty much everything beyond their sight. Every graphical setting except for low will cause the same light deformations, but on low you're going to cast a black wireframe, and this is a problem because on any setting but low, the Infiltrator is better hidden in light backgrounds, like on the seabeds of Indar or the snows of Ázimr. But for players on low graphical settings, the exact opposite is true, as the black wireframe directly contrasts with the lighter backgrounds. The reason why this is such a huge issue is because your concealment strategy as an Infiltrator or the driver of a Wraith especially depends on knowing what graphical setting the enemy is playing on, and obviously this is impossible to determine, so the easiest solution, Sony, would be to make the black wireframe a lighter color, and this would eliminate the luck of the draw effect caused by the differences in graphical settings. Anyway, let's move on to some general strategy. The introduction of the Wraith improved the Flash's ability to fight effectively by light years, because it greatly increases the difficulty for enemy infantry to pick you off of your Flash. This has hands down become the best utility ability to use for combat Flashes, both with or without a passenger. If you don't use a Flash for combat, it's still great for getting into sniper positions, as you can easily slip by enemy lines. Stealth is not an essential upgrade on the Flash because, like we said earlier, being cloaked will eliminate your radar signature. This may change a little bit once sound dampening gets introduced, which is something I believe Kevin Moyer talked about during a live stream. But regardless, sound is not that big of a giveaway, especially during hectic situations and larger fights. Chances are that no one is going to notice you, and if they do, they won't be able to keep a bead on you for very long. In smaller fights though, sound generation is more of an issue, so you generally want to be very aware of your enemy in these situations. If you primarily use the Flash for travel, a Racer chassis will help you get the most out of your Wraith Cloak duration, and it will make you very difficult to pin down. And speaking of duration, recovering your stealth juice whenever you have the opportunity is important. This becomes less of an issue at higher ranks, but it's still pretty easy to waste that first 20 seconds worth of stealth if you only have rank 1. Just as a reminder, stealthing does disable lock-ons, so flicker your cloak when you're trying to save Wraith energy, or cloak away when you're not. Hit and runs are where it's at. You can't stand toe-to-toe with enemy vehicles. A tank is always going to kill you, a Sunderer is always going to kill you, and ESF is always going to kill you. You have to stay far away from bigger targets and pick away at them like vultures circling their next meal. Road killing groups of enemy infantry and max units is probably the most entertaining thing to do in the entire game. I highly recommend giving it a shot if you haven't already. And lastly, don't cloak around allied tanks because you're probably going to get run over. To overview, the Wraith Cloak is an amazing addition to the Flash that not only grants the additional survivability for the Infiltrator and Passenger, but opens up a lot of opportunities you wouldn't normally have, like being able to go behind enemy lines, or plow through a group of unsuspecting infantry, or just escape a hard-hitting tank or ESF. The Wraith, the Scout Radar, and the Turbo Boost are all balanced pretty well around one another. Now, if only something could be done for the IR smoke and the fire extinguisher utilities. If this video has been interesting or helpful, please feel free to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about the channel. If you have any Wraith cloaking strategies or helpful advice you'd like to share, leave a comment or a video response below for everyone to see. Thanks very much, folks. We're all signing off.